Do not settle for the crumbs. You should have the whole cake, the icing, and the cherry on top too.
All right, a special edition of the Crumbs today. Dylan Padgett, welcome back into the studio.
Thank you very much.
Episode 11. It's great to have you back. But we've got the OG Crumbs.
The one and only.
Podcast host, Caro, she's back. Caro, welcome.
I'm back. Thank you. Thank you for having me. We won't mention the 2 hours it took to get me on this screen, but that's fine.
We also won't talk about the fact that I red crossed you and blacked you out for a week. I was hoping you wouldn't mention that.
That's rude.
Just keeping the seats warm over here.
Got fired from my own podcast. How does that even happen? Anyways.
I do want to mention...
No, I'm not holding grudges.
Well, that's good, because we can switch you off at any time. We won't, but I just want to mention the shades. The shades are very famous for the viewers who are watching... Famous in Vegas parts anyway, so they've seen a lot of the Vegas town already, and I'm sure they're going to see more.
They have.
We're pretty pumped though.
That is very true.
Caro, we're going to get into it pretty quickly because there's a massive news this morning in women's football that Angel City Football Club have signed one of our all-time great Matildas, Alana Kennedy. She signed a deal for just a season with an option for a second season in 2026. But this is massive news in Australia in particular. We had 5 women's players, so 4 Matildas and another young Matilda playing in the National Women's Soccer League in 2024. Alana Kennedy comes from England, so we know a lot of our players are either they're in England or they're across Europe playing. For most of the year, there's a lot of good money over there. But Angel City's come up on our podcast quite a lot. Obviously, given the fact that they were sold in 2024, they became the most valuable women's sports franchise in the world. Allowed to talk with my hands when I say that, because 250 million they're valued at. And that's about 110 million more than the second most valuable franchise, or the previous holder of that record, which was the mighty Las Vegas Aces, your new friends in Vegas, who were previously worth the most before them. It's a pretty massive organisation, clearly. So for someone like Alana Kennedy to sign, I think the opportunity for growth and interest in football, and particularly women's football in the US now is huge. But what did you think when you saw the news this morning?
I honestly think she was just sick of England winter and cold weather, and she was like, you know what? It's time for me to go live somewhere a bit warmer. That was my first thought. But then, obviously, I thought about all the logical stuff, I guess. But no, I think it's awesome. I think the NWSL, they've always kind of been they're kind of the little sister to the English league for a while, just in terms of talent. All the best players were in England, but I think now they're kind of becoming, these other players are going to America, and I think it's just awesome to see the league grow. They obviously have the money, they have, the momentum behind them, and I think just adding more of these players from England is just gonna boost it even more.
Yeah, she spent the last 4 seasons with Manchester City.
Yeah.
She'd spent a short period of time at Tottenham prior to that, but she's been over in the NWSL before, so she's played with the New York Flash. She also played in Orlando, but this is obviously a pretty landmark deal that she's signed. And I'm interested on the back of that, what happens. We obviously saw last year Mackenzie Arnold signed a deal. So I said we had 5 players last year. We had 2 coaches as well. So there were 7 Aussies actually over there in that league. But Mackenzie Arnold signed a multi-year deal with the Portland Thorns in 2024. But obviously outside of that, Emily Van Egmond with the San Diego Wave, who's been there for quite some time and been playing in the US for quite some time. So a really amazing signing and something of interest for women's sports followers, particularly in Australia, to watch. Now, we saw one of the most exciting moments, and I got Dylan really excited over the weekend, and I felt bad actually looking back because I was under the impression I would be able to stream Unrivaled on the weekend. I couldn't get it through ESPN. I then tried to get a VPN, which I was able to get successfully. I then downloaded 6 different platforms, and I still couldn't watch Unrivaled. So if you're watching it in Oz, let me know where, because I couldn't find it, and who knows what's on my credit card, because I signed up to several of those trials.
You're about
Yeah.
to get hacked.
I'm
You're literally
about to
get
lose
hacked.
a couple $100.
That sounds like a scam to be waited to say.
It's not going to end well. I'll just I'll deal with the money later. But Unrivaled week 1 was just massive. It was so amazing just following socials, and we've spoken about their social team before, and their brand is huge.
Yep.
And I caught up with one of my players at my local baseball club. Shout out to Lil BT. Lil BT is a massive WNBA fan. She's a women's sports follower, of course, but WNBA, and obviously has been following Unrivaled. And she said, which team are you following? Which team are you following? And I said, look, I usually go for the logos and the colours, and we've talked about this, Caro, before. I decided I was going to support one of the founders, one of the co-founders. So it was either going to be Stewie or Napheesa. And in the end, I decided, Stewie got the chocolates because she won the championship with the Liberty. Poor old Napheesa didn't. They were runners-up with the Lynx, obviously, and she had a stellar year last year, but she didn't get the chocolates. So I went with her, and guess what happened, Caro? Her Mighty Owls won game 1. They beat the Mist. Stewie actually she sunk the first bucket in Unrivaled League history, which I thought was pretty fitting. But Napheesa's Owls went on to win. They won their first 2 games, and they were down. So we mentioned last week the different rule changes in comparison.
Points.
Yeah, and the winning quarter. So it's not timed. Everyone has an opportunity. So the Owls were actually losing to the Mist, but they beat the Mist to the overall score they required in the fourth quarter, and they won. Napheesa Collier was MVP of the game, and then she actually won the first player of the week for Unrivaled. So I think I've chosen a good one. I'm on the Owls train.
Yep.
Who are you with?
I'm actually with the Laces.
Ooh.
I feel like that's aces. I don't know. I keep seeing them as aces. Like I read it as aces and then I realize it's an L. Laces. Yeah. Because of Kate Martin. I love Kate Martin. So I was like, you know what? I'm a bit of an okay, they're not underdogs, but like, you know, you look at the Stewie's team and Napheesa's team. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go a bit right field. And so, yeah, the Laces are my team. Go Kate Martin.
I love that. Kate Money Martin. And she was a superstar as well. I think she won a player of the match either yesterday or the day prior. So Napheesa as well, like there was a lot of discussion in the media, and it was massive because everyone's been talking about the brand and the marketing and the salaries. But what a lot of people hadn't talked about was the actual game. And so the basketball got huge, like rave reviews because it was great to watch. The players don't have time to sort of argue with calls, fouls, any of that because the ball's already moving and the court's really small and it's really fast paced. So the other thing that I thought was interesting too, Caro, was, Napheesa Collier from the outset just looked really solid playing 3-on-3. And I think some of the other players, it's going to take them some time to sort of get into that style of play. And I love, they were talking about Angel Reese and saying, well, she already gets every rebound when she's playing in the W. How many is she going to get now when she only has to defend 3?
Do you reckon from the basketball perspective, from playing your 5-on-5 normal basketball to cutting to 3-on-3, do you reckon it's a big adjustment for those players, or do you reckon they can just move into it?
I think it's a massive adjustment.
And go for it?
The court is smaller. You're almost halving the number of players on the court, and the game's completely different. And it's you kind of have to score early. And as I said, the Mist were winning, and the Owls overtook them in that winning quarter. So it's not always the way it goes, but I think it encourages you to score quickly. We saw a sort of that buzzer beater in the end, the game winner that was amazing on night 1. Like it sort of had it all. I also saw, Caro, and I don't know if you've seen this, it was in one of the articles I read, but for every game where they have their 700, 850 because there's only that many seats in the arena, there are 12 special tickets on the seats or with specific seats, and each of those 12 people get a match. They get given a player who played that night, and they get an item from that player: shoes, a basketball, a jersey, or some kind of player item. I just like that's such amazing marketing, and the people
That's
who've
awesome. I
been
love
getting
that.
these, pieces of amazing memorabilia have been interviewed, and they're saying like we've got history, like we own a piece of history.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought that
That's
was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Anything else from week one?
No, I did have a comment on what you guys were just discussing about the big adjustment. Of course, it's a big adjustment, but I think the maybe like only a few players like playing this type of style would suit them more than a 5-on-5, and it would still take a bit of adjustment. But like I feel like a few of them will jump in and they'll just feel so, I guess, at home with the style because, if they grew up playing like street ball, it's kind of their vibe just to go like bang, bang, bang. There's no plays, there's no real structure.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be interesting to see what players come out of it and may then go to pursue 3-on-3 because we see it's at the Olympics and everything. So I actually think that's something to watch is players might discover their kind of like hidden niche for 3-on-3, and I think that's pretty cool in itself as well.
And it'll be quite interesting to see after a while once they all get used to this new tournament and style of basketball that they're playing. It will be interesting to see how relaxed within the 3-on-3 these players get, and if they actually enjoy it more, and to see if they prefer to play and stay with the 3-on-3 instead of coming back to the 5-on-5. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to it, and if they're more relaxed and enjoy it more than the regular 5-on-5 basketball.
Yeah, I agree, and I think too we particularly in the NBA we've seen so much strategic change, like when it comes to percentage of threes taken, location on the court, and statistically how they play the game is so different. And the co-founders in particular and some of the leadership team for Unrivaled were quoted saying, well, we don't actually know how many points they're going to score. We don't know what the average, rebounds will be because we haven't seen the games played with the caliber of players. Like they've tested it and they've trained it, but when you're actually playing. So I think we're going to see over the 8 weeks or 10 weeks that this strategy changes and the tactics they realise that are going to work or that aren't going to work based on what happens. So that'll be one to watch too, Caro. Moving on to some cricket. So obviously the Ashes, the Aussies are playing the English in the Ashes. Caro, you're a long way from that, but I'm sure you've seen some of it online. The Aussies retained the Ashes.
I'm a long way normally.
That's true. The Ashes were retained by the Aussies. We've defeated them in every ODI and every T20 we've played so far. But a standout a couple of days ago, so we saw Alyssa Healy obviously has been struggling with an injury for...
She's in a moon boot now, isn't she?
For a little while. She might be in the moon boot still. She certainly was the last week. Or after that second T20 or the first T20 she played. But Beth Mooney, superstar, I was going to say Georgia Vole came in to make her debut, took Healy's place. Unfortunately, she didn't score all that well. But Beth Mooney, I was texting a mate of mine, Huffy's now a regular on the show. Huffy, and just saying, look, Beth Mooney's so consistent. She's not flashy. She's no Elise Perry. She's no Meg Lanning. She's no Ashley Gardner. But quietly she keeps amassing runs. So she's just become the 5th Aussie cricketer to reach 6,000 runs. An amazing company. Meg Lanning, Elise Perry, Alyssa Healy and Karen Rolton. So 4 of the best to ever don the green and gold for Australia in cricket. And she did that back in the 3rd ODI. So a massive shout out to Beth Mooney. She just consistently gets things done. In the field and even, and with the bat, but in the field, she, just comes in and keeps. Alyssa Healy can't keep this week, so she gets the gloves out, and it's pretty amazing what she does and her contribution to that team. So a massive well done to the Aussies, retain the Ashes. It's a great series. I'm off to the first day of the test at the G next week, a day-night test of the Ashes at the G. I'm still figuring out, Caro, but something's going to happen there. I'll get some content. But I did want to...
New vlog.
We just hope we can go get the win, and we can... Obviously, we retained it, but the next job is to win in the series.
Oh, yeah. The girls are pumped. And there's no mercy. I mean, Talia McGrath was talking about it the other day after the game. They interviewed her, and she just said, we we're putting our foot down. Like, we're not resting here. Like, we don't feel like we've won anything. We want to win every game. And I think that's the way to go. And it's great to hear that as a supporter. But I did want to mention too, there's been some controversy in the media. We love controversy on the Crumbs.
We love it.
And former English spinner Alex Hartley, she's now commentating. Some of you may have seen her commentating as part of the Ashes commentary team. She made some comments on the BBC last year in October 2024, and she might have questioned she might not have, she did question some of the English squad's fitness levels and suggested that some of them were letting their team down with their level of fitness. Now, here we are in January. She's over here for the Ashes, and some of the players are refusing interviews with her. Now, I find this really interesting, because if women want to be professional athletes and want to be treated like and paid like and compared to their male counterparts, then I'm not quite sure why we can't be making comments about players' fitness levels. And I, to be fair, historically, have looked from afar without having context and thought some of the English players maybe did look a little out of shape. Now, again, it's hard for me to comment. I'm not a coach. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know what role they play, if they need to be really fit, if they don't. And some of them have been bowlers. But I think the fact that an expert in her field's making that comment and then players are refusing to interview when they need media and need press, that doesn't sit well with me. How do you guys feel about that?
You can go first, Caro.
Thank you. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think, as you said, we comment on males' fitness levels all the time. And so I think, if it's warranted, I think it should happen to females. I think obviously there's a difference between commenting on fitness and commenting on body, but I don't think that's the issue here. That's like a whole separate argument. But yeah, I think I find it really interesting. And then them refusing the interviews. Yeah, it's like kind of like, are they putting more damage on themselves by refusing these interviews, as you said, media coverage, when what she said about their fitness levels was about their fitness levels, and in a way they're athletes, they're on this like world stage, they're kind of put up for judgment, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a really interesting one. But yeah, I think if it's coming from an expert, and I think that obviously holds a lot more weight than if it was just like a random, presenter who had not really the, I guess, knowledge to say it.
Yeah, well, and her comments, to be fair, like, she's come out and there's a couple of articles that have been written about this, but she's been interviewed and basically said not all of the players are sort of blacklisting her. Some have been great and some still talk to her, but there are some who basically refuse to speak to her now. And she's saying, well, it's my opinion, and my job is to give my opinion. And in fact, I want England to do well. I want them to win. I want them to beat Australia in the Ashes, and I want them to win every game they play. So my comments are not to bring people down. They're actually to provide feedback and help them to be better. So I find that part interesting too.
Where I two little bits here. Where I see that is coming from, obviously, commentating and giving opinions. You have to give what you got to say what you think and what you think's best for not only the sport but like moving forward. But then for the England players to then basically say that selected few that just basically say, oh, we don't want nothing out of you. That's, for me, basically saying that they're admitting that, yeah, they're unfit. They don't want to speak about it, move on. But I feel like not speaking about it is the worst part. If you still contribute to the media aspirations, get your cricket out there, give it a go. You don't know, like, obviously cricket's a funny game. You can play good and then you can play poorly. But if there's media out in the world that someone's given an opinion piece and then you've basically said, no, I'm not talking about it, you're basically giving their opinion to be then factual.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing worse than an athlete than making someone's opinion factual. That's where I sort of say you sort of got to just go with it instead of pushing it away, because it just makes things worse.
But it amplifies it, doesn't it, Caro? I mean, now I think what's happened
Yeah.
post this is now everyone, the people who hadn't really been looking at that, are now going to be judging every English player's fitness level
Yeah.
and watching them. You
Exactly.
know, everything is
Yeah.
going to be judged
It's gonna be
with
interesting.
more scrutiny than it ever has. So, look, watch this space. I think there's still some matches to come,
Some
even though
movement in the air.
even though we've retained the Ashes, there's some more. So there's another T20 tomorrow, which I'll be watching again. But I want to throw it over to you, Dill, just for a second to mention a little bit about the Australian Open.
Yep.
And I want to kick this off just quickly because Danielle Collins became, talking a little bit about controversy, but she became a little controversial.
The devil on tour.
She beat one of our own Aussies, our own Aussie up-and-comers last week in the Oz Open. And I'm going to let you sort of tell the story, but what I wanted to add was funny because after she did become this villain, after the comments she made and her behaviour on court, where she was sort of making a few gestures and being she was a bit of a knob, actually. That's a wanker, Aussie term,
Flog?
Aussie slang.
Flog?
Flog, one of those words. But someone got on her Wikipedia page. I love this stuff.
Oh.
Like, this is just great. This is why the internet's great. Someone got on her Wikipedia page and changed her introduction to say Danielle Collins is an American professional tennis player who became the laughingstock for an entire nation with her loss to Madison Keys in the 2025 Australian Open Tennis Grand Slam tournament. It's since been deleted, but I just thought that was hilarious.
Oh, that was funny.
And that's why I love the internet. But talk us through what happened, Dill, and how women maybe are becoming the villain, and is that good for women's sport or not?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that, so basically for those watching and listening at home, what basically happened was the crowd was getting a bit crazy. She told them to shut up. And then at the end of the game, she was basically saying, kiss my butt, all this type of stuff, getting the crowd crazy. So that's where the villain in her came out. See, in sport, in male sport in general, you see a lot of villains. You see a lot of people are like, nah.
Curious?
Yeah. Well, I don't mind him.
Sometimes
he just needs to pull his head a little bit. But you see a lot of villains out there and you're like, you can pick them. In women's sport, you can't, there's not many villains in women's sport, or especially at the moment. But when someone says something or does something, they're a villain like that. I feel like to make sport interesting, you need villains. Mm-hmm. You need those controversial players to keep this interesting, to talk about something, keep the topics moving. Have the next time you verse them in a game or in a sport, you got something to be like, oh, nah, we're going to beat you. You're the villain. So, to be honest, I feel like it, in a certain way, it's a good thing for the sport that she's, not saying her, but there's been someone who's become a villain. But in the same time, sportsmanship and acting like that is also poorly for sport. So it's different when you put it on a scale.
Any publicity is good publicity, right, Caro? And she's come out since and said, well, I'm happy to be the villain because I've been offered 6 sponsorship deals at this event. Thank you very much. And by the way, all those people who paid their tickets and came in and booed me, you're all paying my salary. I thought those comments were actually really funny.
And then she goes on to say 5-star holiday.
Where she got me was I'm going to spend it on a 5-star holiday when LA, where she's from, is burning. And there's devastating fires still there. But, Caro, what are your thoughts on the villain and this situation and what it means to women's sport?
I have a few thoughts, actually, on this whole, kind of debate. I think it's interesting. I think historically women's sport didn't have villains because my view on it is that men can act like that and can
they get
be
away with
unsportsmanlike, and because they earn enough money, and if they got fined, it didn't matter to them. They can just pay the fine. They're not going to
unless you're Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly. But for women, I think for so long, they weren't playing for money. They weren't earning any money, all this stuff. If they had acted like that and they got fined, there goes their salary. There goes like any money they earn from whatever they're playing. And so I think historically that's why we haven't had villains, because I think in a way they didn't have room to F around, basically.
Yeah.
Like they could easily have just gotten, been like, okay, you're done. So I think, and I also think just in general, women, I think are just more grateful for their spot in the sport just because of what, for so long, we couldn't be in professional areas. And I think that it's just like a difference between men and women and how they act, I guess. And I think there's just a lot more sportsmanship in women. And like, obviously, villains make it interesting. I'm not arguing that. I think they do. But I think, in a way, the reason why we haven't had villains in women's sport is because they literally couldn't afford to be a villain. And I think that's kind of just stayed the way. Maybe that will change going forward with the boom in women's sport. But I also think it's kind of nice that we don't have villains in women's sport, because I think, if I'm being honest, like when people act like a wanker during sports like men's, to me it's like, well, you don't care about your spot in this sport. Like you would rather just act like a wanker. You don't care about winning. You don't care about anything else. So yeah, I find it interesting, but that's my little stance on it.
Money changes a lot of people.
Well, and I think Caro's hit the nail on the head here. So women have had to toe the party line. They've had no other choice, because anytime you speak and people, when men come out and say things and they're confident and they, people think they know what they're talking about their sport, they're almost heroes. Whereas often when women come out and speak like that, they're arrogant, they're divas, and that's sort of been frowned upon. And that's a stereotype of women and men in day-to-day life. Like I'm not allowed to say the same thing as my male counterpart at work, because it will sound different coming from me. And that's just the way society still works a little bit. It is improving in areas. But I think you're right. Women have had to stay quiet. In this instance, I think this is actually amazing. I love this because I love the drama of sport. And as much as she's the villain, is she really that big of a villain? She was being booed for 2 hours. Like, good on her for making comment. I probably wouldn't have gone that far with the behaviour and the mannerisms and the things she did on the court. But I'm not totally against the things she was saying. I think she was spot on. If you want to boo me, but I'm going to be who I am, and that's who I am, and I'm not going to apologise for it.
Well, to be fair, Djokovic loves her and loved that situation.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then also, Caro, too, I think, we watched the WNBA and we loved the WNBA last year because of a number of different things that happened. But also the little villain of Angel Reese that popped up. She wasn't really a villain, but she was painted in the media as a villain. And we loved that she was painted as a villain, because it became a talking point. It became something we were interested in and we wanted to follow. So again, any publicity is good publicity, but I think villains in sport, there is a place for villains in sport, within reason, of course. But I think tides are changing and women are going to be able to speak up. And I hope that continues. What else have you got for us, Caro? Tell me about the Fever and what they're doing.
Yeah, well, Indiana have announced that they're building a new facility, which, I mean, if you didn't see that coming, I feel like you've been living under a rock, because obviously they had a record-breaking season with, we don't even need to mention her name, and so it was probably going to happen. But what I found interesting, and I wrote down some of the, I guess, facilities they're going to have in this new facility. They're going to have like a childcare centre, which I think, again, it's becoming a normality to have these kind of things in a women's sport complex, which is great, because obviously for a while we didn't have that and we didn't have that access. They've got like all the podcasts and the content studios. They have a Pilates area, which love that. I think that's awesome. So yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. I think it's $78 million. Like, that's insane. I don't know if you've seen like the sketches of what it's going to look like.
I have. I saw the renders. They look brilliant.
So I think this is just, I mean, I feel like I've spoken about this a lot on this podcast, like a bunch of new facilities that are getting built for all different sports. And I think it's just awesome, kind of becoming a bit of a trend and a bit of a normality that we are getting these facilities. And Yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, and one of the cool things too about Unrivaled and the media across particularly the last week, of course, leading up to and then the start of the event, was the players talking about like just pumping up the fact that what they're getting from an amenities point of view, facilities, resources, you know, the meals and the childcare and everything they've got access to, the medical support and the medical staff and all those things. That's taken the game to a new level. Not only is that what they should get, but it actually propels their game. They're playing better because they've got access to these amazing things. And we know that CBA...
They're not worrying about so many things. Like, if they've
No,
got kids,
they don't have
they're
to.
in childcare,
They
they
don't
don't have
have
to worry
to.
about that. Where are they? Who's
Spot
looking
on.
after them?
Spot on. So the face of the landscape of what women are provided in sport suddenly becomes a hot topic and is discussed more regularly now. And in particular, we said last week on the show, the CBA for the WNBA is coming up at the end of 2025. But this is not really about the WNBA. It's really more broadly about women's sport and what women as professional athletes, what they deserve and what they should be given in respect of their job and their profession. So watch that space. You had one other topic for us, Caro. Throw it at me.
Yeah, I just wanted to very briefly touch on the UDA Nationals, which happened over the weekend. I don't know if you've seen any of this, you might not, but it's referred to as like the Super Bowl of dance and cheerleading because it's basically the college nationals for their dance and cheer teams. So all the colleges are there and it's like this massive thing. But what I wanted to talk about, and I think this is I saw it when I was flicking through social media. So Ohio State dance team won the jazz category, I think. So they won a national championship on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
And then they flew to, I think it was Atlanta, to go cheer on their Ohio State football team as they went to, I think they were competing for a national championship as well.
And
And I
one.
was just like, yeah, so they've gone from their national championship, then they're jumping on a plane straight away going, and then they're going to do their cheer stuff there. And I think, in a way, this is a debate that I have heard about before, but that dance and college cheer teams don't get the recognition or the respect for being a sports team.
Mm-hmm.
They train the same amount and they go to nationals, but they don't really have the same recognition. I thought that was just amazing that, you know, that's what they have to do, and I'm sure they weren't complaining, but like that in itself is pretty cool. So I just want to touch on that, give it a bit of coverage. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, that's interesting too, and it sort of raises the debate again of what is a sport and what isn't a sport, and that comes up almost weekly in my classes. What do we classify as a sport and what don't we? And a lot of my students are F1 supporters, and that debate arises often. Obviously, there's a lot of other sports, and this might be, we might do a special episode talking about this, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on a number of different sports, or what people classify as sports. Are they sports? And where do we draw the line? What constitutes a sport? And we obviously talk a little bit in our classes about the theory of what makes something a sport. You know, the theoretical breakdown of what a sport looks like. That topic is always really heavily debated, and no one ever agrees.
It's a conversation that never dies.
Well, it is, and it's people sit around their fireplace at family or their dinner table at family events, and this debate arises. I'm sure Mama Caro has raised this one with you, Caro, about a number of sports, but I'm interested to hear from you guys. And I think there's some out there. We've got a very special podcast, the 9 Dart podcast, and the boys were on this morning. I'm sure there's a number of people who would suggest darts isn't a sport and that it's something people do at the pub on a Friday after work.
It's a sport. It's the greatest in the world.
Oh, Lorenzo, I was waiting for a comment. But we'll discuss that another time. Any thoughts on the week to come in women's sport before we finish up, Caro?
I'll be curious to see who wins the AO because I was personally rooting for Coco. So
Yeah, I was shocked how she lost.
I'll be looking at that. Yeah, Unrivaled. Keep it coming, I say. Pumped for week 2.
Let me know if you can watch on your TV because I can't.
And Alona Ma broke her nose, everyone. So
Yes,
put that
check
in there.
out her socials. But
There goes the modelling career.
It's a good one. There was a great. I shared a great LinkedIn article with Caro yesterday that talked about. Alona Ma was interviewed talking about wearing makeup and having foundation on, and there should be nothing wrong. In fact, we should encourage girls to be able to have a face of makeup and go out and knock people out and run into them, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I think she's spot on there. And we should be living in a world where girls, they're not mutually exclusive. You can't wear makeup and then not. So you don't have to wear makeup and avoid playing contact sports. You can wear your makeup and go out and clothesline deal if you want on the sports field.
Exactly.
If it's fair, of course. We don't want any dodgy clotheslining deal.
See you later.
But no, a great article, and she every week there's something amazing that's happening with her, and that the way that she is empowering young girls in life, not just sport, just in life, is having a massive impact.
Yep.
Dill, anything for you?
Yeah, before we finish, I just got one thing I wanted to discuss as a group. So in the Australian Open, we have a young gun. How do you say her name? Destine. Can't pronounce her last name. Avia or something. She's 24, Australian. She's played for a few years, but current ranking's 195 in the world.
Mm-hmm.
She has prize money of $887,012 if she wins. Her win-loss record is 250 wins for 158 losses. Career high is 147 wins in a year. So my topic of discussion is, with our young tennis players, especially in the Australian Open, we can get some good runs of some of them winning 2 rounds, 3 rounds. But my question is, do you believe that we are setting our Australian tennis female stars up for success, or do you think there needs to be more put into our tennis programs for them coming through?
Caro?
Oh, am I answering that one? I'm thinking.
Well, that was to the floor.
Although I think, floor smoke.
I don't really have an
think that's a
answer
tough
for that
one.
question.
Well, I was going to say that as well, because I think I don't know enough about the, I guess, pathways to tennis for young Aussie women. Like I know, for example, one Aussie that I've watched since they were young, Cruz Hewitt. He obviously came through the junior ranks and stuff in a pathway. And, like, we're not seeing a female version of that, but probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that his dad's Leighton. So, started from a young age. But I think that's an interesting question. And I think after some research, might be able to answer that a bit better. But yeah, I would hope to see an Aussie woman kind of break into it, because I feel like we haven't really had a big name for a while.
I mean, it's really hard to answer the question because we did have a big name very recently who retired at a very young age, and there's nothing we could do about it. But Ash Barty potentially would have gone on to win 10 majors and be number 1 in the world for years and years in a row. And then she retired and she's had a kid and tells us in the media she's never playing again. So it's a difficult question because the reality is we had that. And we had the role model and we had the player at the top.
I wasn't saying we didn't have it.
No, but I think Caro suggested we haven't had that for some time. We have, and now she's at home with a toddler, half her luck.
Yeah. So started in 2015, so it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
She hasn't won any career titles. She's won some small tournaments.
So hang on, just float back here. So this one interests me now because you're telling me she's had a career of 10 years. And what did you say her prize money was? $887,012. $887,000. Look, in 10 years, I know there's travel involved and she's got to make her way around the world and
She's
do all
only
those
24.
things. But let's be honest, 10 years, divide your 887 by 10. She's on about $87,000 a year. I'm pretty sure the people on minimum wage working down at the warehouse who are earning $30,000 a year would love her pay packet. So I find it difficult when these questions are raised or this discussion comes up and people say, oh, it's not very fair. She's not making a lot of money and she's got to oh my God, she's got to travel the world and stay in a 2-star hotel. Horrible. Yeah. Oh, and it's so hard because she doesn't have her own personal physio with her. Oh, God. Well, either do I when I go to work, and I'm certainly not making big money like those guys are. So I know she's not on millions, but 87 here and there, and it was probably slightly less, and now she's probably making $100,000 a year or something, is more than most people I know make. So I don't have any sympathy for athletes who are telling me that. Yes, if you're a pro and you're travelling the world, but to be honest, get better, love, and win more. There's your answer, and then you'll make more money.
Fair enough.
Mic drop.
That was a good response.
Love that topic, Dill. I've loved chatting with you guys. Now that we've got our technical issues sorted, we'll be back again next week, Caro. We'll figure out a time and we'll get you back on. Big thanks to Lorenzo for producing today.
Yeah,
we
cheers,
appreciate
Lorenzo.
your time. And I do think darts is a sport, just as a closer. And we'll see. I cannot finish this episode without an absolutely special shout out to Jenny. We didn't mention her in the last episode. Jenny, we're thinking of you, and we are getting our episodes up just for you to listen to at the moment. It has not been easy to coordinate our schedules. Someone is in another country, like literally, in a dorm room.
Good old Vegas, hey?
At the University of Las Vegas,
You guys
Nevada.
want a dorm tour?
Actually, before we leave, we should give Jenny
It's
a quick
messy.
dorm tour. Show us around.
It's messy. Can we do it next episode?
No, just give us a really quick one and just hide the mess.
There's a half-constructed lamp.
Yeah, that's why I wanted
Okay.
you to show us. You should
I'll
make
show
your
you guys
bed.
the lamp.
I
I don't know if you guys can see that.
can
Yeah.
see
I
the
was like,
lamp's not
wait.
finished.
Give me one sec. Give me one sec. There, there's
Jenny's
my
getting
half-constructed
seasick,
lamp.
by the way. Look, yeah, we've got half of it.
It's a bright future in that room.
Yeah.
Nice, I like it,
Do need to
Caro.
clean it though. Thank you.
I'm sure your house will become a home in no time. We've loved catching up. Big shout out, as I said, to Jenny. And we still, to all our listeners, we still haven't had a bakery contact us. We're on the lookout. I better do some more research, Caro, and local bakeries
come on tomorrow.
around the area. And I'll get our head of marketing, Dill Padgett. Welcome to the role. You don't get paid.
Anyone want to sponsor us, Sala? Hit us up.
And we'll figure that out. But a big thanks to you, Caro, and Dill. Great to have you back, mate. And I'll see you both next week.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you.